NASCAR loses this, I mean, they could theoretically be ordered to sell their tracks that they own.
Wow.
The judge could theoretically rip up the charter agreement. Now, he may institute some other level of a charter system, but he also could just say this charter system's gone. You're going to have to start from scratch. And then the other side of this is if 2311 and Front Row lose, it's fair to say that those teams are likely not going to be around anymore. They're out their 6 charters.
Welcome, everybody. It is time to go lights out with the one and only Jordan Bianchi from theathletic.com, but also doing some stuff for Dirty Mo Media right now. Jordan, I imagine all that with all that's going on in the world of NASCAR, that's plenty to keep you busy, isn't it?
There is no off season. There's a non-racing season, but there is a non-off season. There's always something going on. And, as we record this, I got to be in court for a hearing tomorrow on the ongoing trial. So there's always something down the pike.
Yeah, Jordan, I think it's probably a big challenge for you guys that cover it day in and day out. Sometimes we get questions in our part of the business, but for you, it must be difficult when we hear things. We always hear injunctions and stays and all these different words and terms and everything that don't really mean much to the regular public. What kind of a challenge has that been for you to try to bring this to your viewers and your listeners that are trying to make heads and tails of this lawsuit?
Well, I give a big shout out to my university, University of Wisconsin River Falls. When I went journalism classes, there was a lot of legal stuff we had to learn. And as they're teaching us, they're like, you may not think you're going to need to know this someday, but you will. And that's 100% accurate. And I always tell people in general, I tell people what I do for a living. I cover NASCAR. I'm a reporter. And they're like, oh, you write about cars going in circles. And I'm like, well, sure, I guess, but I also cover billion-dollar lawsuits, injuries, people potentially dying or have died, billion-dollar contracts, et cetera, right? But that's what sports is now. It's just not about what happens on the field or on the racetrack. It's about everything else. And so when you do cover this, I like to step back, and I always say I like to write for a broader audience. I tend to write for a broader audience at the Athletic, which is part of the New York Times. And I always say I'm writing for my mom, and I want to write it so that, maybe she's not a NASCAR fan per se, but she understands what's going on here. And it's okay to over explain sometimes and maybe just say, hey, here's what you need to know, and kind of cut down to it a little bit, because I think it's really easy to get lost in the minutia all of this and get confused. And and people are like, well, I don't really know what's going on. Can you explain to me? It's like, I just want to be up front. This is really confusing for everybody. So here's what you need to know. Let's just keep it simple.
Yeah, so Jordan, at the risk of oversimplifying it, I think we all remember, and occasionally I paid attention in school. It was pretty rare, but I remember the Sherman Antitrust Act, and what it meant is somebody can't have a monopoly or a total control over a business. And what I'm basically getting out of the whole thing is that Denny Hamlin, Michael Jordan, 2311, and Front Row Motorsports, they feel as if their hands are somewhat tied by NASCAR having the total control over the charters and total control over the business. And then NASCAR is kind of saying back, well, it's our business, it's our ball, and if you want to play in our court, you use our ball. Is that oversimplifying a little too much?
No, I mean, that's probably the best way to explain it in the layman's terms, right? Of like, they feel like NASCAR has a monopoly and they've operated themselves in monopolistic practices, and they don't agree with it. And so they're in court. And now this, stems from the charters and the charter agreement and how that all came to be, and the negotiated deal that came into place last year where 13 and 15 teams signed, and the 2 that didn't, 2311 and Front Row, then filed a lawsuit. But at the end of the day, this is what they're alleging, is that NASCAR and its CEO and chairman, Jim France, have acted in a monopoly, and they're in court to hammer this out. And where this goes is going to be fascinating, and the potential implications for this on either side are very, very significant.
Yeah, that was the next thing I wanted to ask you, and I'm glad you brought that up, because this also, we cannot oversimplify and we can't underestimate what it really could mean. And I think also, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but some of the things have been dropped recently. Some of the complaints
Yep.
by the teams have been dropped and pared back just a little bit to where the implications might not be as huge. But if NASCAR loses this thing, Jordan, it can really change the way it can change the sport in a great way, can it?
It could change a significant way. I mean, if NASCAR loses this, I mean, they could theoretically be ordered to sell their tracks that they own.
Wow.
The judge could theoretically rip up the charter agreement. Now, he may institute some other level of a charter system, but he also could just say this charter system's gone. You're going to have to start from scratch. I mean, and then if that's the case, the teams that have paid many millions of dollars for charters would theoretically be out that money. And, that's could potentially impact TV contracts because how are those written and that kind of thing. And so there's all sorts of different dominoes on how this would fall. How does the power structure with the NASCAR work? Does the France family still control everything? Are they still making the grand decisions? Is it still a private business per se where they get to dictate how this is going to go forward? Or do they now have to bring in everybody else? And has this become more of a league type structure like we see in the NFL or Major League Baseball and the such? So there's that. And then the other side of this is if 23XI and Front Row lose, it's fair to say that those teams are likely not going to be around anymore. They're out their 6 charters, which they have paid millions of dollars for. And they will be reimbursed for that. I believe, don't hold me to that, but I believe they'd be reimbursed for that. But they would be effectively out of the business. They're not going to have charters. Both teams have said if we don't have charters, we're not going to race. And so NASCAR then is going to lose 2 teams, one of which is owned by co-owned by Michael Jordan, which is never, to say, hey, there's all sorts of that stuff. So it just gets complicated, yes. But the impact of this potentially one way or another is very significant. That all being said, you would hope that cooler heads will prevail and that they will come to a settlement. But I've been saying that for the last year since this lawsuit was filed. And here we are about 3 weeks away from trial date, and we're still have no settlement. So I have no idea.
Man, Jordan, I was right there with you when this first thing came up and people were saying, hey, man, a team is suing NASCAR. What's going to go on? I just thought myself, said, well, okay, you got complaints on both sides and you can see the arguments on both sides and they'll just get together and iron this thing out. But, man, that's really not what we're looking at.
No, I mean, they've been close. I mean, we reported a few weeks ago that, there were negotiations were down the road, and there was a belief that a settlement could potentially be reached around the Phoenix race weekend. That did not happen, and it still hasn't. But as these things go, and you talk to a lot of people smarter than I am when it comes to antitrust lawsuits, they tell you it's not uncommon that this goes right up to the last minute, and then there's some kind of settlement reached. It's also not uncommon for a trial to begin, and then day 1, day 2 of that trial, both sides kind of look around and go, we're really doing this? Seriously? Okay, we didn't mean to go this far, and then then they hammer out a settlement. So there's still time. Maybe I'm an optimist. Maybe I'm not a little pie in the sky, but I believe that there will eventually be a settlement reached, just because it's just advantageous for both sides to come to some kind of compromise.
Yeah, I'm with you. That's what I'm hoping for. But also to take a step back for some of our listeners, Jordan, I think we saw guys like Darrell Waltrip, Mikey Waltrip, Ricky Rudd, Ricky and Linda Rudd, that had put their lives into these race teams. Yep. And when it came time to disband the race team, they opened the garage door and sold all their equipment for pennies on the dollars. NASCAR wanted to, and I believe in good faith, to give these people something. Hence, the charter came about, and the top 35, I guess it was in points at the time, or 36, 36. At the time, they were awarded these charters, which were very valuable. So in my mind, in the first place, to make it so, not that everybody's going to be the Dallas Cowboys, but to make it so your race team is worth something, they gave you a charter, and therefore, if you went to the racetrack with this charter, you got more money, you were able to guarantee yourself a spot in the race, and you're also able to make more prize money as opposed to somebody who's without a charter. So in this case, Jordan, do you see it the same way I see it? As it seemed as if NASCAR was really trying to throw these teams a bone.
Yeah, I mean, listen, there is no disagreement. They're 100% correct. Like NASCAR, to its credit, went along with the charter system. They didn't have to. It was almost a good faith kind of thing. And they did because they wanted to give value to the teams and to owners who have invested a lot of money into this. And as your point, there's a lot of teams that have closed their doors over the years. When it was time to shut the door, they got nothing, virtually. And NASCAR was like, no, we need a healthy sport. We need healthy teams, and the healthy teams are going to help grow the sport. Here's what we can do. And so that was where the charter system was born. And from that is where we are today. Initially, the charters were not, they were low. I mean, you could get a charter for about $2 million when this all started. And now, the last charter that was sold was for $45 million. So
wow.
the system has grown astronomically in about 10 years. And that's to NASCAR's credit. Like they instituted this system and they put the guardrails in place and they made this work. And, and from their perspective, I'm not trying to speak for them. There's a frustration of, we did all these things. We've acted in good faith when it came to the charter agreement. They say we did, we instituted it. We've rewarded teams. We gave them this when we didn't have to. Last year, 13 teams were on board with this new agreement, and yet 2 of them weren't, and they're suing us. And there's a little frustration and confusion there and that kind of thing. So it's part of it. And it's, again, like when you got so much money at the table, there's enough piece of financial pie for everybody. Let's just figure out how to divide it out and make everybody whole.
Yep, there's no question about that, I think there could be common ground, but also at the same time, it's a little bit difficult to come to an agreement when there's so many strong opinions. And I think that kind of leads us to our next subject, Jordan. I, for one, and I don't know if I'm minority, majority, or whatever, I love the way NASCAR went to a playoff system. They have a Super Bowl Game 7 World Series feeling to it. But recently, there's just been a ton of fans that have been up in arms about the way we crown a champion. I like it. I don't want to see it change, but I'll also support the sanctioning body if this change is really coming. What do you hear from your people? That is the change coming, do you think, and will it be major?
There is 100% a change coming to the playoff format. There will be a big change to the playoff format. Now, what that change is going to be exactly is up in the air. The things bandied about the most are returning to a season-long, full 36 race championship. Basically, whoever's got the most points across 36 races, you win the championship. There's also a heavy discussion centered around the 10 race chase, going back to that, which is you have 10 or 12 drivers, and over the last 10 races, whoever's got the most points there wins the championship. So you'd still have a playoff, but you wouldn't have elimination. There's also been some talk of a 3-3-4 format, which would then also incorporate eliminations. But what it would do is not crown a champion with one single championship race, if you will, like Game 7, but a 4-race stretch where a certain number of drivers who accumulate the most points over 4 races would then be crowned a champion. I will put any money that I have, which is not a lot, on the fact that one of these formats is probably going to be in place next year. There will be a change to the playoff format. What we have known for the last 10 years or 11, since 2014, is not going to be in place for next year. I can promise you that it's going to change. It's just a matter of how it's going to change.
So, Jordan, TV ratings are down. We know that, with the exception of the Xfinity Series. And whether or not that's tied to the championship format, I think is really difficult to be, for people to correlate that, whether it is or whether it's not. TV ratings are down, but when I look at that, Jordan, you just went to, well, it's spread out across more networks. It's a little bit more difficult. And I say a little bit more difficult to find the races at times because of where they ship. But I think NASCAR fully knew that when they went to streaming some races, they were going to lose some viewers, but it's somewhat duty now for the future.
Yeah, I mean, it's so multi-layered, right? This is like the biggest onion ever with all these layers.
Yeah.
You have to have a streaming component to your. If you're going to be a sports league now, like you have to have a streaming component. That is the future. You have to be on board with that. Pick a sports league, pick a major sports league, and they're going to have a streaming element to them. NASCAR was slow to adapt to that. When they signed their last television contract, streaming really wasn't prevalent at the time. It really wasn't coming to the forefront. And so NASCAR kind of got caught in the middle here with this. And now they're on board. And look at the Amazon numbers this year for the 5 races. They were really good. They were exceptional, right? A big part of the TV deal now, though, that really is kind of hurting the numbers is the number of races on cable versus the number on network. And John, you know this so well from your experience.
Amen.
Just
Sorry, amen.
yeah, but when people network TV is more accessible on people. It's easier to find. It's everything. You don't have to worry about cable packages and tiers and all of that stuff. It's just easier to find. It's more readily available. Events on cable, particularly in NASCAR, don't always do as well on network, and now NASCAR has been impacted by that this year. Cable races really kind of drug down the number quite a bit. But when NASCAR was most part, at the beginning of the year especially, the numbers were really, really strong. They did tail off later this year, though, towards the fall. Now, some of that is the fact that more races were on cable. The other part of that is, too, let's not ignore the elephant in the room, it's the NFL. The NFL is extremely popular. The NFL, and it's never been more popular than ever before. The numbers for games continue to rise almost on a yearly basis. And so it's hard to go against that. And NASCAR largely does hold its own on Sundays. Like, they do deliver a very good number, where outside of the NFL, they're often the number 2 most watched sport. So that's something to hang your hat on. But there is a ways to go to get that number even higher. And that's part of the changes that are kind of underway with the playoff format and maybe some other things as well. Is how do you get NASCAR reposition it where you can make it, basically kind of reclaim some of its past glory.
And Jordan, being a total realist, we've watched sports and we've watched racing our whole lives, all of us that are involved in this thing, and we're passionate about it. And I don't think I could sit here and tell somebody if I really didn't think it was the truth. Look at some of the finishes that we have had and look at some of the diversity of winners we've had. Parity is great for sports. And also, when you look at the product on the racetrack right now, the margin of victory. Now, granted, not every game ends, and not every ball game ends in a walk-off home run. Not every NFL game ends in a Hail Mary pass. Yeah, we've had some blowout races for sure, but I just think it gets too quick when people say, "Oh, the car sucks," okay, or "Oh my gosh, NASCAR is just terrible because Daniel Suarez led just about every lap of a Sonoma race." I think you need to, as a fan, be kind of smart and embrace that and say that different races have different complexions.
Yeah, I mean, it just kind of feels like societal, right? In a way, it's like everybody wants instant satisfaction, and everything is either the best or the greatest or the worst and miserable, and we need to change this. And there's no in between. And it's like, look at Major League Baseball. And I'm a diehard baseball fan, and it's like there's 162 games in the schedule, and you don't dissect every baseball game saying this is the best or worst and we need to do X, Y, Z. You kind of step back and you look at it from a 30,000 foot perspective. And I feel like sometimes we on this side, on NASCAR side, kind of struggle to do that. And it's like every race is, and listen, I'm guilty of this every week because on my podcast, we have a good race poll and we vote whether the race was good or not. So trust me, I get it. But that's just part of it. And so it's challenging. But you're racing is for the most part pretty darn good. I mean, the races on the intermediate races on tracks are consistently delivered. The last few short track races have been very good. NASCAR and Goodyear have made tremendous strides to improve that. There's more changes coming next year. Like there are criticisms of this car that are more than fair. But to just swipe it with a broad brush and say this car sucks, it's horrible, the racing is worse than ever, that's just factually incorrect. Like the period. And so that's a struggle. But, when you also have so much variety now on your schedule, and there is more variety in the schedule than ever before, how do you build a car that works for all of these tracks? And that's the challenge. And this is part of the frustrations that, NASCAR is like, hey, man, we go to a mile and a half one week, we go to a short track the next, then a road course, super speedway. We're not doing dirt anymore, but it's still, how do you build how do you build a car like this? And I think largely they do a pretty good job. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. There are still there's still things that can be better, but overall the car has delivered as it is. But I also think that people's expectations have also shifted, and everybody wants the new greatest thing. And when things don't meet your expectations, people have an outlet like they never had before to voice their criticisms and, what, on social media and whatnot. And that definitely gets amplified.
Yep, no question about that, especially. And again, it's a societal type of thing. Jordan, I was a customer before I was an endorser. I'm a subscriber to The Athletic. I love it because I'm a fan of all sports. It lets you select what kind of sports you want to come to your inbox or however you take it in. That is a wonderful format. What's it like to work for The Athletic? It seems like it's a great place.
It's a dream job. I have one of those jobs. I wake up every day and I'm excited, enthused about my job. And at night when I go to bed, I don't close my eyes going, oh man, I got to go to work tomorrow. Like, I am incredibly blessed. I work for a great company. I get to do some amazing things. I get to cover a sport that I love. I get to work in sports, which has always been a dream of mine. I am a very happy boy, and I am very blessed to do what I do.
How did you come up through the ranks, Jordan? What was your path like to get here?
Well, I wanted to be like you, kind of, in a way, John. I wanted to work in TV. I wanted to work.
You got to set your sights higher.
Yeah, well, no, sports radio was really what I really kind of wanted to do, with the ultimate goal of then going from sports radio into TV. And I had like what I thought was a dream job out of college. I worked for a big sports station in Minneapolis. I was not good at it. I wasn't the best at it at that time. And I struggled, and I quickly realized that maybe radio and everything else is not for me. And so I kind of made a diversion, and I started writing and covering different sports, and ended up on NASCAR. And the long meandering road this is how I ended up covering NASCAR, which I've been covering the sport now full time for the last, I don't know, say 12 years or so. So wanted to do sports radio. Love the format, loved it back then. I just lacked the talent and the chops to actually successfully pull it off.
Yeah, there's something special about sports radio. I always thought there was a great romanticism about it. And then TV, for me, it was a dream job to work for Fox for so long. But Jordan, I think one thing today that we're all up against, and I like to talk to fellow journalists about this, because I think right now, it's like if you have a Twitter handle and you want to just say something, it seems like all of a sudden you're a journalist. And I think the people that are still out there, like the people that work with you, some of the other great beat writers we have right now for NASCAR, and people that have been there for a long time, are still telling it like it is, are still doing the right thing, but yet you still have that battle against the person. I mean, how much stuff do you see just on Facebook throughout the course of the day that, people put out, here's this great story, and it's a teaser, and it's clickbait. That's something that I think we all have to be aware of these days.
Yeah, listen, there's always challenges with social media. The mentions and the comments can be brutal sometimes, especially if you have opinions and people don't agree with you, which I have learned very, very well. And that's part of it. This is kind of what you sign up for, and you agree with it. I also tell people, don't read the comment section. Don't read the comment section, because you're going to hear things and see things that you don't want to read. But I've got a good group of people around me, and then and if I have opinions, I talk to them and see what they think, and am I off base here, and that kind of thing. And that's part of it. It's like a checks and balances, and then part of that too is being accountable. Is when I don't just have an opinion to spew an opinion. I fact check, and I talk to people. I go, hey, is there numbers? Is there data that can support this? Tell me where I'm wrong. This isn't just how I feel. It's this is why I feel this way. But then here's the numbers and the evidence that support this as well. And it's just, again, it's being accountable, it's being respectful, and it's trying to just be accurate in a lot of what I say. Like if I say something it's like, I'm going to back it up with facts. And I think that gets lost a lot of times too, is that anybody can have an opinion and anybody can say something, but that doesn't make it true necessarily. And you do have to have evidence and data to back it up. And I think I do that well, in that you may not agree with what I say, but it comes from a place of, listen, here's who I've talked to on this, who are involved in this directly. Here's the data I've read. Here's the things I've read. Here's the people I've talked to. Like, here's how this opinion was formed. This just wasn't grabbed out of thin air.
Yeah, so I got to tell you, Jordan, my favorite one ever, it was kind of before social media really took off. We used to have message boards, and we had message boards from Speed Channel, and some of our producers used to watch them pretty closely. And I understand wanting to gauge, what people have to say.
Sure.
So I thought one day, well, I'm going to go ahead and look at the message boards today, to see what people are saying, because we just began like these 55 hours of coverage, of straight coverage from Daytona Speed Weeks. And the first thing I see, Jordan, when I look up there was somebody was ragging out one of my coworkers, and another guy said, well, that person is fine. The guy I don't like is this John Roberts guy. And then the next thread in the message was, well, why don't you like him? And the guy says, because he looks like a child molester. And I almost responded. Wow. I almost responded, said,
wow,
what does one look like? But that was when I kind of turned off the message boards from then.
Yeah, you listen, I'm all for feedback. I'm all for constructive criticism. And you're always going to say things, listen, there's always going to be things that you say that don't come out the right way, or maybe you're like, I could have said that better. I could have presented my opinion better. And that's part of it. But sometimes people, I've also learned that sometimes people just are going to say things about you that that is what it is. And there's nothing you can say or do to change their opinion. Their opinion is what it is. And you're just better off just ignoring it.
Exactly. There's a couple of sayings that I don't think we should say on the air about those things but anyway, I think people probably are saying right now, I know what he's talking about right now. Hey, so Jordan, you're going to be busy in the off season, man. You got more trials going on and a lot of changes still coming from NASCAR.
Yeah, I mean, listen, as of now, and like I said at the beginning of the show, is things can change in a hurry. But as of now, come December 1st, NASCAR is in court versus 2311 in Front Row Motorsports, and so it's going to be interesting to see how that unfolds. And that is expected to be a 2-week plus trial, and so we'll see. That's going to eat up most of the December, and then from there, Christmas holiday, and then boom. The calendar flips to January 1, and then you know how that goes, John. Then we're kind of in the kind of ramping up for Daytona. So, yeah, there ain't much off season. There's a non-racing season, but there is very little off season.
Yeah, before we know it, we're going to be back racing again. Well, I'm going to be watching The Athletic, and I recommend anybody else that's out there, watch The Athletic. Keep your subscription up to that. And, Jordan, thank you so much, man. Great talk, great conversation, man. I love having intelligent conversations here. That's what we're about, and I do appreciate your input.
Anytime, John. We talked about doing this for a long time. I'm glad we could figure it out. And anytime you want to have me back, I would love to be part of it.
Hey, you got a deal, man. Jordan Bianchi, The Athletic. Thank you very much.